Been spending most our lives living in a gangster's paradise. Been spending most our lives living in a gangster's paradise. Keep spending most our lives living in a gangster's paradise. Keep spending most our lives living in a gangster's paradise.
3, 2, 1, roll 5.
In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Welcome, friends, and good evening. Welcome to the inaugural episode of Crime and Punishment. Thank you. It is pretty epic intro music. I made this myself, believe it or not. That is the official remix. So, first of all, on a serious note, I wanted to dedicate this inaugural podcast, this inaugural episode, to Judge Morgan. Judge Morgan passed away last Thursday. And outside of Central Florida, you probably don't know Judge Morgan, but he was quite literally the best judge I've ever known. And of all all the people that could have gone, man. That is, it's devastating news, not just, to the Ninth Circuit, but to me personally. Haven't seen him for years, and that was, I did not see that coming. But anyway, so this is a legal podcast. This is not a political podcast. That being said, the format that we're going to follow is going to be a cross between what we've done with Guerrilla Radio and the Daily Planet. So, radio was obviously emphatically political, and it was based on, it was based on doing interviews, going through essays, philosophical, theoretical topics. The Daily Planet was a program where we went through the news and we dissected the news, and educated everybody as to how propaganda is written and how it is disseminated. So this will be a cross between those two programs in that we're going to talk about theoretical things. We're going to talk about books, whether by Carl Schmitt or John Austin or any of those guys. We're also going to do, however, news on this. You'll notice we never did talk about the news in Guerrilla Radio. That is what we're going to do here, though, talk about legal news. If we talk about politics, it will only be insofar as politics affects the legal system and legal cases that are going on out there. So, this is, as you will notice in days to come, this is an official podcast for the Invictus Law Firm in Orlando, Florida. So, this is not freewheeling. This is not part of the Revolutionary Conservative. I am no longer the head of the Revolutionary Conservative. That has been passed on to new management. I, after my time in jail, have come to love Big Brother. And I trust that all of my listeners will too. Because how would we know what is right in life? How would we know the things that are good if Big Brother did not tell us? So, this will not be a political show. This will be a legal show. And it will be double plus good, comrades. I promise you. The headquarters for the law firm has always been in Orlando. Technically, it is a new law firm now. We had to shut down the old one when things went awry. So this is the Invictus Law Firm. It is in Orlando, Florida. We take cases in Orlando, obviously, but also Kissimmee. Both of those are the Ninth Circuit, the Ninth Judicial Circuit in Central Florida. I'm thinking about expanding to Ocala, but we can talk about that later. Let's see. Yeah, thank you, Capo. Thank all of you guys. Is Gus still locked up? Clearly not, Dave. I couldn't be doing this show from jail. So yeah, thank all of you guys. Jail's an experience, and trust me, you can't miss things coming into you in jail. And I genuinely appreciate everybody who was messaging me, even when I wouldn't respond, who would, send money for commissary or write letters. I mean, that's life and death in there, man. So thank you guys all very sincerely. One thing I noticed in setting up tonight's show, we set up God knows how many accounts, with SoundCloud and YouTube and getting Facebook back and Instagram and all this stuff. We spent so much time on that. I didn't even get to think about the fact that the intro song is only like a minute long, and I didn't have time to post all these things myself. So if anybody wants to be a social media intern for the law firm, please do let me know, because that would be super helpful if someone could share all this content. Let's see. I guess buffering like mad, fam. Well, that's not good, but some people are having problems with the buffering. Some people are not. This is audio only, so yeah, you don't need to have some crazy video going. There's no imagery coming to you tonight. We might have videos in the future, but for this evening, it's going to be nothing but audio. Good, I'm glad that's working out for you. So, clearly I can see the chat, so if y'all have questions, I'm going to be looking at it, so I will talk to y'all whenever you got questions. I think the most appropriate thing to talk about tonight is what everybody's been asking for a year now. So when I was first going to launch this show, I asked all my friends around, what do I talk about on the first show? Everything else I've got pretty much planned out, but what do you do for the inaugural episode? And naturally, the thing is, you want to address everything that's been going on in the past year. Not the Capitol building fiasco or the COVID pandemic, but the fact that I was in jail all of 2020. That's something that has to be addressed. Life in jail, I thought we'd talk about that tonight, because it's a different experience. I've been to so many jails and prisons, I couldn't count them, all across the country, but I was always visiting the jail. It's a much different experience when you're no longer visiting, when you don't get to talk to your client and walk back out or run out to your car. You're staying there indefinitely. It's a different world. In fact, the first night there, I was put with the heads of the dorm, which is to say the gang leaders in the cell block, right? So they told me, welcome to the real side of the world, as soon as I walked in. When people know you're a lawyer, they take you out and they put you, not take you out like kill you, like take you out like put you in isolation. But only the inmates knew when I first got there. The jail administration had no idea somehow. So I was in general population for a while, and it was after a couple days that they finally caught on that I was a lawyer. And they do it as standard operating procedure because they figure, if you've got clients that didn't like the way you handle the case, they're going to knife you in there. It makes sense. somebody feels their client screwed them, or their attorney screwed them, yeah, they might stab them to death. Yeah, it makes sense. I didn't have that problem, but they put me in isolation anyway. And then they extradite me. And then they put me in isolation again, and again, and again. Has my diet changed? No, it has not. Now, there was a point in jail where I had to eat bread, yeah, at some point, because it became a medical necessity. I lost over 30 pounds in jail. Yeah, they starved me to death in there. And not just, the South Carolina, I mean, all the jails I went to, they refused to recognize a religious diet, so I lost over 30 pounds. Once I got to about $1.50, my friend who I talked to about nutrition, he and I decided that it was a medical necessity, and as a medical intervention that I had to eat this. So put the weight back on, and then went back on the diet. So yeah, the diet has not changed. Let's see, what else about life in jail? Yeah, the food sucks. The food is terrible. It's everything they say it is. There are no illusions about food. There's not enough of it. It is horrible. Gives you serious problems, health problems, dental problems, sleeping I mean, there is no end of things you could say about the food. The food is horrible when you get it. If you get it. It's terrible. What else? Oh, yeah. When you're urinating, face away from the other guys, Don't do that. Just do everything you can to hide when you're doing that. When you're going into the cell, you gotta defecate. You put toilet paper in the door so that they know. It's like a flag, like, hey, don't come in here. This is happening, right? As far as prison sex, I don't know. I don't know about prison sex. Haven't been there, but I do know that in jail it is definitely looked down upon. I don't know if that's because of PREA, which is the Prison Rape Elimination Act, where they started taking it dead seriously and you get serious time for that, but I know that it's very much looked down on, everywhere I've been anyway. So it's not even a discussion. Did you join a prison gang like MS-13? No. I didn't have to join any clubs, any gangs, any cliques. I was actually very fortunate in many ways. The philosophy of the people in the jail administration is that if you're a lawyer, you have to be separated from general population because they're going to kill you. I looked at it quite the opposite way, in that I'm a criminal defense lawyer. Like, if anybody wants to be friends with somebody, they're going to want to be friends with me, right? It seems logical. You're in a bind. Everybody in jail's in a bind. Everybody wants the best information they possibly can. Their lawyers don't come to see them. Everybody's in a black hole. Nobody knows when their court date is. Nobody knows, what their girlfriend's doing or whatever. Nobody knows anything. So the person you're going to talk to the most is the guy who's a lawyer. You're certainly not going to try to steal his food and stab him, right? Like, that's just, I don't know. There are certainly shyster attorneys out there who might have been in danger for things like that, but I'm not on that list. So I had a great time in jail as far as, getting along with people. I had zero enemies anywhere, except for the Orange County Corrections Department here in Orlando. That is a different story. But that is the subject of a lawsuit. We've already filed the notice of lawsuit. That lawsuit, the time limitations are up in April, so that lawsuit will go live in April once the statutory waiting period is over, and then I will be able to talk about that. But everywhere else, no problem with corrections officers. No problem with it. Zero problem. The opposite of a problem with inmates. Everybody was super cool to me. So that was the least of my problems. Were you able to keep up with current events? Negative. I probably could have. I have obviously a lot of friends who are very into current events. I did have a friend or two who would send me news, like important news, like, hey, these people are burning down the entire country. Like, yeah, I heard about that. Or, hey, there's a virus that's got the entire country on lockdown. I heard about that. You couldn't not hear about COVID in jail because they locked the jail down too. And for good reason. A lot of jails were, cesspools when it came to the virus. But as far as current events, news in general, no. But to be fair, I really didn't care. There was nothing I could do, I was sidelined in a very real way. No way around it. So I don't know how to begin explaining that kind of mindset where you have been taken out, put on the bench, put in literal isolation. Now, I did eventually get out in the general population, but yeah, I can't really explain that kind of mindset where you have been completely taken out of human society and politics is just ceases to exist when you have entered this sort of world. Really, nobody in jail gives a single damn about politics. Black or white, the jails, ironically, in Central Florida were far more populated with black folk than South Carolina. South Carolina is about half white, half black, and that's largely due to the meth problem in South Carolina. But it doesn't matter what race you are. Nobody cares about politics. Nobody cares about your politics. Nobody cares about their own politics. Nobody cares about their cellmates' politics. Like, politics, they just don't exist in jail. Nobody cares. All this nonsense about, well, like I said, this is not a political show. This is a legal show. So we're going to stick to talking about law. Let's just suffice it to say that nobody talks about politics in jail because you have real problems to worry about, not manufactured problems by the media. So, good to see you too, Eva. I almost called you evil. So, what else? What else can I talk about jail? I don't know. Solitary is a terrible experience, and that's about it. This show tonight is going to set the tone for the rest of this series. Whether it's going to be a half-hour show or an hour show, I don't know. I'll obviously do a lot more show prep for future shows. We'll talk about the news. This dude in the chat is going to be on with me, I think, next week. So we'll have other people talking. I just figured for this inaugural episode, we'd talk about all the things everybody wanted to hear about so we can clear the air. And I think, obviously, one of the most... I did not get tested for COVID. I never got COVID. I think I'm immune to COVID, as a matter of fact. But anyway, the cases, right? Everybody wants to know about the cases. It was heartwarming to me. Everybody I talked to, whether they were writing me in jail, or I talked to them after I got out of jail, or I talked to them after I got out of jail the second time, nobody knew anything about any of this, and yet everybody knew something is not right here. Every single person I talked to said, yeah, I don't know. I didn't know what was going on, but I could tell what was going on by the way things were unfolding, You get charged with something like kidnapping. I mean, they executed people for that. That was an actual felony. The difference between a felony and a misdemeanor used to be that a felony was something you were executed for. Murder, rape, burglary, kidnapping, horse thievery, only because if you stole somebody's horse, they couldn't live, they couldn't work, they couldn't, get to town. Like that was a serious crime. Now a felony is anything. You cross the street 3 times without a crosswalk and you've committed a felony. You have 1 tablet of alprazolam, you have committed a felony. You have a baggie with cocaine residue, you have committed a felony. Like, it does, you could do anything. And basically everybody in this country is a felon. You just haven't been caught yet, right? But no, kidnapping is an actual felony. That's a real felony. And you have to think about that. And a lot of people did. And they saw what was going on and they thought, something just doesn't seem right here. And then they get to a hearing where it finally comes out, actually, there were 10 cameras across 4 states over a period of 2 days that prove this absolutely did not happen. That show this woman going into a police station by herself, right? Getting her fingerprints taken, to then go, and there's another camera of her going into the family court the following morning to change her name to Invictus. Right? That's pretty devastating to a kidnapping charge, which is why, obviously, it doesn't exist anymore. But what's even more devastating to a charge like that? Innumerable witnesses and a year's worth of text messages proving that actually the entire family was planning to move to Florida the entire year. And there was a custody war that was fought all year over moving to Florida. Unbelievable that the police could think that they would get away with something like this, or the prosecutor. Happens every day in this country. So here's another thing about jail. I can't tell you how many guys I saw plead out because there was just no other way out. The game of prosecutors all across this country is keep them in jail until they cry uncle. Hold them there without bond, destroy their lives, let their, kids be taken away from them, let their businesses fall apart, let them lose their house, their apartment, their car, their dog, let them lose everything. Let them be dragged through the mud in the media. They can't get out. Let them sit there for a few months watching their entire life fall apart. Not just their life, but their kids' lives too. Trust me, they'll plea. And I saw it happen over and over and over and over and over again. If you talked to me before jail, or if you heard my broadcasts before jail, you would hear me say over and over, don't take a plea, don't do it. If you're in political activism, you need to know that you're going to be arrested and they're going to hold you there and you're going to have to fight this for years. You have to go in knowing that. Today, I understand. 100% I understand. I get it. I understand why people take pleas. I really do. I hold absolutely no judgment for anyone who takes a plea because I've seen it happen over and over with my own eyes. Guys I know absolutely did not commit any crime, especially not the crime they were charged with. My cellmate, true story, was charged with burglarizing his own home. For those of you who are lawyers listening to this, you know that is a legal impossibility. You cannot possibly burglarize your own home. You can break into your own house all you want. It is not burglary. And yet, this man was charged with first-degree burglary. Ended up taking a plea, not the first degree. They, dropped the charge down a couple degrees. I don't remember what he got, but he took a plea to it because he was there for 3 months, just sitting there. No news, and then everything gets canceled because of COVID. I was actually supposed to go to trial in April of last year. Everything got canceled because of COVID. So this guy charged with burglarizing his own house, an absolute impossibility for him to have done, takes a plea just to get out of jail, because otherwise he's not going anywhere. Knew another guy. He shows up, I forget whose house it was, either his house or the girlfriend's house, they lived together, I don't know. But some other guy's there. Not good. From what I recall, this was a long time ago, I'm pretty sure he did beat up the guy. But didn't touch the girlfriend. He's holding his daughter. The girlfriend is attacking him for, I assume, for starting flack with the guy that was there that should not have been there. Girlfriend is attacking, like physically attacking him, right? He is shielding his daughter, puts out his hand. This woman runs into his hand, gets some kind of nick on her face, her lip or something. He gets charged with domestic violence. Took a plea. Not because he thought he'd lose a trial. Not even because COVID canceled all the trials. But because he had to get out of there. He's got a daughter. The girlfriend, the daughter's mom, is a drug addict. She's out of her mind. The daughter is out there, what is she doing? Who's taking care of her? This father is in jail because of what this woman has done. He's got to get out. He takes a plea. I'm not judging that guy. That is how prosecutors operate. They want the win. They want the conviction. They are far more concerned with their petty career ambitions than they are serving the interests of justice. So this guy now has a record of domestic violence for having shielded his daughter from the physical attacks of the daughter's mother. That's justice in America. And the next time somebody accuses him of domestic violence, he's very well going to prison. Right? Because how do you get around that the next time? Prosecution 101. Keep them in jail. Keep them with that garbage food. Throw them in isolation. Do everything you can to just keep them there. Because as long as they're there, they cannot address the problems going on in the outside world. They can't stop the eviction. They can't stop their kids getting taken away. They can't stop mom not going to rehab or going to rehab. They can't stop anything going on out there. So just keep them there in jail. They will take a plea. Prosecution 101. I've decided I'm going to get some of these papers here. I'm going to ruffle them, tap my desk with them, so it sounds more professional. This is what Rush Limbaugh does. My dad made us listen to Rush Limbaugh when I was a kid growing up. My brother and me, excuse me. My kids are listening to this show, and I just used poor grammar. Give me a wrench. Oh, great. I've got you, Dave. Add moderator. So, let's talk about that. I don't know what to say about that. That's another question I've gotten a lot. About my father's case, I really cannot comment on it, to be quite frank. That's my only comment is I can't comment on it. I can tell you he wants to go to trial. That's about all I can say. Can also say had absolutely nothing to do with me. I can also say that the Orange County Sheriff's Office arresting me on charges they knew to be false probably has something to do with that. But yeah, had nothing to do with me. I'm sure Orange County Sheriff's Office was upset about that. So they knowingly arrested me on false charges. And that is the subject of one of the 3 lawsuits going live in April. So we'll talk more about that in April. Yeah, so when you are the direct object of the sentence, it's me. So like between the buried and me, right? When you are starting the subject, when you are starting the sentence, when you are the subject of the sentence, it's I. So, rules for the road. So, as far as the rest of the South Carolina case, I can't really talk about it. Oh my God. You have no idea how much I want to talk about it. We have a legion of witnesses and a mountain of evidence that I've been dying to put on since April. Really, I've been trying to go to trial since last February, for a year now. COVID. So we'll have to wait on that. But you've already seen what's happened with everything else. So, it's not like we're going to have to take bets on how this is going to turn out, right? The Florida case I can't talk about, but not really. Because it's in tandem with other cases. What I can say about it is that for all of the terrible things I have to say about cops and prosecutors, I will say this. One prosecutor actually did his job. And I am genuinely, eternally grateful for that. One man did his job, and it made all the difference in the world. If cops and prosecutors would just sit down and look at the evidence instead of just asking for warrants on a whim, if prosecutors would look at the evidence instead of just blindly believing cops, my God, things would be so much different. If cops would investigate the evidence instead of just blindly believing people who just make things up, it would be a completely different criminal justice system. But the fact is, everybody wants to say, it's not my job, not my department, not my job to determine whether the guy did it or not. I just arrest him, I put him in jail. It's up to the prosecutor to decide, whether he's going to press charges or not. The detective in Orlando actually said that to me. Said, well, if what you're saying is true, then they'll dismiss the charges. Yeah, which they did after I spent over 4 months in jail because they couldn't take the time to sit down and look at the evidence, which the prosecutor did. Thank God. Because I'll tell you what, a lot of times prosecutors say, it's not my job either. It's the judge's job. If the judge thinks that this case should be thrown out, file a motion to dismiss. The judge will dismiss it. File for an adversarial preliminary hearing. A challenge that there's probable cause. They'll throw it out. Not my job to throw it out. But it is. It is the cop's job. The cop has discretion. It is their job to use that discretion wisely. It is their job to investigate and make sure that they're making a lawful arrest. It is the prosecutor's job to look at the case and say, hey, this is not correct. What this person said to that person is not true. We're going to dismiss this case. That does happen every now and then, I am very happy to say. And things like that give you faith that maybe the legal system is not so far gone. Maybe you can have justice in this system. Goes to the judge, because the cop and the prosecutor say, not my job. Judge's job to throw it out. Well, the judge often does the same thing. Not my job to throw it out. I'm going to give this to the trier of fact. This is for the jury to decide. Happens all the time. Every step of the way, nobody wants to take responsibility, and everybody gives it to the jury. Ultimately, it's up to the jury. That's the philosophy of these people, right? Problem is, juries are notoriously retarded. We hold the jury system in just absolute sanctity. It's a lie. It's a total lie. Everybody knows that trial lawyers manipulate juries. Everybody knows it. It's on TV. It's all over American culture. Everybody knows that you appeal to a jury not by facts and logic and, hey, let's take a rational look at this. You appeal to a jury by emotion. It's all about the show. It's all about getting them riled up so that their logical faculties just go away. And they're judging based on the narrative you've told. They're judging based on the story, the emotions that you have given them. They're judging based on anything other than look at the facts and make a rational decision. And really, would you trust them to make a rational decision, the average man? Would you? There's a reason that they teach classes on how to manipulate juries. There's a reason they have apps on choosing juries. You've seen Devil's Advocate? Like, yeah, it's a little, supernatural, but it's not like that doesn't happen. It's not like you don't choose jurors based on, what kind of person they are, what kind of shoes they're wearing. You really think that when you ask a juror, do you think you could be fair and impartial in this case? And they say yes, you believe them? No, the defense attorney wants a juror who they think is going to be sympathetic to the defense. And the prosecutor wants a juror who they think is going to be sympathetic to law enforcement or the victim or the alleged victim, right? Everybody knows it. It's like the biggest open, dirty secret in American jurisprudence. The sanctity of juries is just, it's something we tell ourselves. Like we tell ourselves that the TSA keeps us safe, right? Or that let's not do politics, but you get where I'm going with this. Everybody says it's not my job. Cops say it's not my job to make an investigation. It's my job to make an arrest. It's up to the prosecutor's office to determine whether they're going to go forward with it or not. Prosecutor says, not my job to determine whether it happened or not. We're going to leave that to the judge or to the jury. The judge says, not my job. Lawyers should have argued it better. Juries, it's up to them. And when it gets to the jury, it's anonymous. And you're not even allowed to ask how they came to their conclusion. A whole bunch of not my problem going on, which makes it everybody's problem. There's nowhere to place blame or responsibility. In the end, it is an anonymous group of people who nobody can question. You don't know why they made the decision. And the judge, the prosecutor, and the cops are all off the hook. Because after all, the jury made the decision. Obviously, this sanctified body of peers who are above reproach examined all of the evidence in a clear light, with a rational mind, and they made a good decision. On to the next case. In the event that someone is wrongfully convicted, that is what we tell ourselves. And the Innocence Project, please look into that. It shows you that's just not true. Juries make wrong decisions all the time. So do judges, so do prosecutors, so do cops, so do bureaucrats, so do politicians. Juries make wrong decisions. They send people to death row with those wrong decisions. They destroy people's lives with wrong decisions. If you don't believe that, just look up the Innocence Project. Look up the cases that they have had. Some of them are just unbelievable. I saw a guy who was in prison for, 8 years? Absolutely did not do it. Unquestionable. 8 years in prison. His son, growing up without him for 8 years. I saw the video of their reuniting, and it's a tearjerker, 8 years, because we tell ourselves that juries are absolutely above reproach, that the system works, And you know what? When somebody walks, when the jury says not guilty, and they didn't do it, we say, oh, well, see, the system works. That guy went, that guy made it home free. Obviously, the system works. Next case. Always moving on to the next case. Because nobody wants to look at how this system actually works. You know what would be a better world and a better way to run this system? If cops and prosecutors did their jobs. If they said, it is my job, it is my responsibility to determine whether what is being put on my desk is true or not. It is my job and my responsibility to determine whether there is evidence here, or whether the evidence completely contradicts what I've been told. It is their job. It'd be a different world we'd be living in. So, I have not looked at this chat at all. I'm sorry. I kind of went on a tangent there. So, that's about all I've got to say about the cases, I reckon. Yes, I arrested on bail and sent back. Yeah, so I guess a lot of people are confused on what happened. I was arrested December 30th of 2019. I was extradited. I was arrested in Melbourne, Florida. I was extradited to York, South Carolina in January of 2020. I was there for a couple months. I was released on April 1st, went back home to Florida, got arrested again just 19 days later, April 20th, in Orlando, my hometown. Got extradited again a month later, back to York, South Carolina, spent another several months there, got out at the end of August. So I have been officially out for a little over 5 months now. So hope that clears that up. So, did they deny you bail? Yes, they did. So, true story. Let me take a sip of this tea first. As you know, having heard my broadcasts before, my father is a criminal defense attorney. I was born when he was in law school, actually. So, always being a criminal defense attorney, right? More or less. That's a longer story, but he has always been a criminal defense attorney. Did not just... I told him when I was arrested, I'm not getting bond. That's just not going to happen. And he said, of course you are. You are entitled to bond. Like, he's in that mentality as, 97% of America is in that mentality that the system still works. Like people in the system, they care about the law. They're still in this mentality that, the Cold War is over, and the Soviet Union, they were the bad guys. These things could never happen in America. Like, we don't have political prisoners in America. Politics is absolutely not allowed in a courtroom in America. That's what the Soviets did. Like, we beat the Soviets. That's not going to happen here. I am a criminal defense attorney. Political cases are all I did for a couple years. And I'm telling my own dad, who also is a criminal defense attorney, I'm not going to get bond, Dad. I'm telling you right now, that's just not going to happen. Because I've seen it over and over and over and over in courtrooms all across America. All my clients denied bond. All the people who, they're not even my clients, just people who are in the right-wing movement. Can't give them bond. Make something up. Make up, their affiliations or their radical political ideology. Not political, excuse me. We would never use politics in a court of law. My God, God forbid we ever infringed on a man's First Amendment rights. No, but look at this speech, Your Honor. But look at these connections, Your Honor. Look at what we found on his computer. Bond denied. And again, the reason for that is the same reason they've been doing it to everybody for years and years and years and years. You take somebody's bond, you keep them in jail, you pressure them to take a plea. And then they don't have to go to trial. Then you don't have a show trial where the state is embarrassed and it's shown that it was political. So, yeah, I didn't have bond to begin with. But then, again, like I said at the beginning of the show, things started coming out. Like, oh my God, none of this was true. Not a single word of it was true. And they have evidence that... And here's the thing about criminal defense in general. I said at the beginning of the program, I was unbelievably fortunate in my time in jail as far as getting along with everybody, making friends with everybody. I had zero enemies. I had a great time. I was also incredibly fortunate in that I just a mountain of evidence. I mean, extensive evidence proving everything. You cannot imagine how rare that is. It's unheard of. It will make you a believer in God. Because the general rule is, it's he said, she said, it's circumstantial, it looks bad, people are talked into taking pleas because, well, what's the jury going to think when they hear this person and they sound credible, and then you get up there and then they got the police officer. But in my case, there's actual evidence, right? That's unbelievable. The fact of the matter is, most people do not have evidence. There are only stories. And a lot of times the story that this guy tells the cops, it's taken out of context. It is twisted around. Sometimes, to be fair, the cops take that story and, they put it on paper and it's not exactly what was said. They didn't deliberately take it out of context, but it's just not what happened. That happens quite a lot. Quite a lot. And there's no cameras. There's no text messages. There's just, she said this, he said that, he gets arrested, he makes this statement, now he's pressured into taking a plea deal. So that's another thing. That a lot of these cases are determined by just stories and pressure. And we say that this is justice. So let's go back to the chat here. I'm sorry, I didn't see what Roots said. Well, I don't know. I didn't see that question. Sorry about that. I did see this. We do need more criminal defense attorneys. And actually, the young man who's going to be joining me on the show next time around, he was one of our law students. And I was in jail so long, he's now a lawyer himself. So thank goodness for him. And let's see, Dave is asking, was there ever real justice? That's a good question. Here's a story, a movie I would suggest to all of you. It's called The Conspirator. It's about the assassination of Abraham Lincoln and the people who were put on trial for that by a military tribunal. And it shows a defense attorney who was a Union soldier who absolutely did not want to take this woman's case. They were prosecuting the mother of one of the conspirators, saying that she too was a conspirator. And he absolutely refused to have anything to do with it. He was pressured to take the case, and then he finds out the government has been up to some really naughty stuff, right? And it shows just how political these things are. Obviously, it's going to be political. It's the assassination of a president. Like that, you can't get around the politics of that. But not just that. The local politics, too. Everything is political. The guy gets kicked out of his professional club, his country club, whatever you call those things back then in the Yankee States. You see how he's treated by his fellow members of the legal profession. You see how he is expected to behave and how it is not in the interests of his client or of justice. And yeah, it was a Hollywood movie. Obviously, it was propaganda. The interesting thing about the conspirator, though, is that the guy is defending Southerners. He's defending a Southerner, a woman, who happens, he believes, to be innocent, right? Now, Hollywood making a movie about a Yankee defending a Southerner after the assassination of Lincoln. Can you imagine a movie like that being made today? That'd be incredible. You know, the first movie I ever took my kids to see, like all as one family, was John Carter. It used to be A Princess of Mars when the book came out by Edgar Rice Burroughs. And John Carter was a Confederate officer. Like, could you imagine that coming out today? A Confederate war hero being on the screen, a Disney movie no less. Like, so the conspirator is interesting because they're defending a Southerner after the assassination of Lincoln. But when you look at when the movie came out, it actually makes perfect sense. Because at that time, it was all over the place that the Bush administration was taking these detainees to Gitmo, locking them up, putting them on trial with military tribunals. It was a real constitutional crisis that we had. Calling them enemy combatants to get around giving them a trial. These were serious issues back when the War on Terror was raging in 2001 to 2004. That's when this movie came out, and that is the context in which that propaganda is being put forward. But Dave's question, was there ever really justice? Yeah, that's the question of the ages, isn't it? People have been railroaded since the dawn of time. And this is something I had a long time to meditate about in jail, boy. You think about, well, what if we had trial by combat? Maybe that would be a more just way of determining these things, right? Somebody makes an accusation. I challenge you to combat, to the death, sir. I challenge you to a duel. They used to believe that the outcome of that battle was determined by God. So the winner gained victory because God ordained it. We think of that looking back now and we think that's insane. Like, obviously, people win fights, they lose fights, like it happens all the time. The bigger guy probably won, the stronger guy probably won, the guy with the more martial skills probably won. Why would anybody think that you could do trial by combat and God is going to come down and determine who the win? Does that really, though, sound any more ridiculous than going to trial in modern America? To think about it. Is it more ridiculous to think that God is going to determine which fighter wins in a trial by combat than it is to think that you can go into an American court and present logical evidence to a jury one way or another and come out with the right outcome? They're both just as up in the air, aren't they? When you really look to it, how do you determine truth? That is the question of the ages there, Dave. How do you determine truth? Was there ever really justice? Look back to the crucifixion of the Christ. What is truth? There's a reason the Christ was silent when he was asked that. How do you determine that in the temporal world? How do you determine that in a court of law? And on that note, I suppose we will end today's episode of Crime and Punishment. Next time around, we're going to talk about some federal issues. We're going to talk about some federal laws, some prosecutions that have been happening. In future episodes, we're going to talk about legal philosophy, what law really means. We're going to talk about what a civic body is. Things that, I don't know, you may have interest in, you may not have interest, but I'm going to talk about things that interest me because I think they're interesting. So it will be news, it will be legal news, current events from a legal perspective. It will be legal philosophy, legal topics. So hopefully you will find them interesting. I know I will. So, yeah. Hope you like the show. Thank you all for listening. We're going to sign off now. So, good evening, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Take a look at my life and realize there's nothing left. 'Cause I've been blasting and laughing so long that everyone thinks my mind is gone. But I never crossed a man that didn't deserve it. To be treated like a punk, that's unheard of. You better watch how you're talking and where you're walking, 'cause this life will only leave you lined in chalk. Been spending most of life living in the gangster's paradise. Been spending most of life living in the gangster's paradise. Get the situation that got me facing. I can't live a normal life, I was raised by the stripes. So I gotta be down with the hood team. It's television watching got me chasing. Death ain't nothing but a heartbeat away. I'm living life to a die.